You might think you know everything there is to know about Peppa Pig. After all, years of watching the adventures of the world's most famous piglet should have taught you a thing or two. But have you ever noticed some completely nonsensical situations in this universe? Seriously, there are moments when anyone watching Peppa Pig must think, this doesn't make any sense. The road. Let's start with the episode Mr. Bull's New Road, where things get confusing right from the start. Pig family is on their way to the vet because Peppa's goldfish needs a checkup. Everything seems normal until, out of nowhere, Mr. Bull appears with some shocking news. The road needs to be demolished to build a new one. Seriously? Tearing down an existing road to build another in the same place? But wait, there's more. He also announces that the animal hospital, which is running perfectly fine, is going to be demolished right then and there for the project. If you know even a little about how large construction projects work, you'll realize this makes no sense at all. A demolition of this scale requires thorough planning and plenty of notice for people who work or live nearby. But apparently, nobody here received any prior information. And the most ridiculous part? The one who solves the entire issue is Peppa, a 4-year-old piglet. She suggests building a tunnel to avoid the demolition. How could Mr. Bull, an adult working in construction, not think of that first? Not even Daddy Pig, who's an engineer, had the idea? It must be a joke. Get ready to uncover 10 moments that will make you question everything you know about the pig family. So put on your golden boots and join us as we explore the incredible world of Peppa Pig. The job. Now let's talk about another nonsensical situation in Peppa Pig, the move that never happened. Do you remember the episode where Susie, Peppa's best friend, was almost forced to move to another continent? It all happened because Susie's mom, Mrs. Sheep, got an important job offer. That makes sense so far. When someone gets such a big opportunity, moving is usually a decision made after a lot of discussion and certainty. But what doesn't make sense is that, at the end of the episode, Mrs. Sheep finds out she didn't get the job, and it seems like a complete surprise to her and her family. How does that even happen? That's not how major job offers work. When a company invites you for something as significant as moving to another country, everything is usually well established before the official offer. And what's even stranger is how upset Mrs. Sheep gets about not getting the job, even though she seems incredibly talented at what she does. If a company from another continent is interested in your work, it's clear you're excellent at your job. So why all the drama? Mrs. Sheep could easily find another opportunity whenever she wanted. This is just another example of something in Peppa Pig that makes no sense. The engineer. Now let's talk about Daddy Pig, who is a construction engineer. Yes, same one who designed Mr. Wolf's house and probably worked on other projects in town. So how do we explain the disaster when he tried to hang a picture on the wall at home? In the episode, Daddy puts up a picture. He completely destroys the wall. First, creates a massive crack in the bricks. Then, he ends up breaking part of the structure. Seriously, you don't even have to be an engineer to know how to use a hammer and nail. Imagine this. A professional who works in construction every day can't manage a simple task like this? It's hard to believe he's as competent as everyone says he is. Do you have any theories to explain this strange behavior? Let us know in the comments. The vegetables. Have you ever thought about how the mere existence of a giant, talking potato in Peppa Pig is already pretty bizarre? Well, that's not what we're focusing on here. Instead, let's talk about an even stranger moment involving Mr. Potato. In one episode, Mr. Potato comes to town to open a new sports center. So far, so good. But during the event, tells the kids they need to eat more fruits and vegetables. And that's when things stop making sense. Of course, eating vegetables is essential for health. But let's not forget, Mr. Potato himself is a vegetable. Theoretically, other fruits or veggies would be like his relatives. Maybe the carrot you put in your salad is his distant cousin. Or that pumpkin you cooked for dinner could be an old friend of his. If you think about it, encouraging people to eat vegetables is almost like suggesting some kind of crime against his own species. Doesn't that seem a bit contradictory? Honestly, this scene is so absurd it's hard not to laugh. But since, in our world, vegetables are just food, show us that you care about your health and comment below with the word vegetables. School roof. Have you noticed that Peppa's school roof always seems to be in trouble? If you've watched more than one episode, you've surely realized it's almost a tradition for the roof to need repairs. But what really doesn't make sense here isn't how often the roof breaks, it's how the repairs are funded. Peppa's school always relies on events to raise money. For example, Daddy Pig once jumped out of an airplane, or rather, fell out of it, to help fund the repairs. Kids have organized a fair with games for the parents to buy tickets. And on another occasion, Daddy Pig had to run a marathon to gather funds. But here's the question. Why do the parents need to spend money on events to raise funds that they're ultimately going to donate to the school themselves? Doesn't it seem like an unnecessary cycle? They rent booths, planes, and other equipment for the events. Wouldn't that money be better spent directly on fixing the roof? Basically, the same group of parents funding everything indirectly but in a much more complicated way. The school roof has almost become a character in its own right, given how frequently it causes problems. Mr. Bull. Since we're talking about things that don't make sense at Peppa's school, we can't forget about Mr. Bull. Have you noticed how he's always there, even when he has no apparent reason to be? One example is an episode where Madame Gazelle is teaching the students to play instruments from different parts of the world. Everything is going fine until the narrator says, the parents have come to pick up their children, but guess who shows up? Yep, Mr. Bull. Here's the problem, Mr. Bull doesn't have any children. He recently married Mrs. Cow, and we did see a little calf walking with her in an episode. But that child doesn't attend the town school and isn't even in this particular episode. So why is he always hanging around? Seems like Mr. Bull has some mysterious attachment to the school or simply likes to drop by for no reason. Whatever the case, definitely doesn't make any sense. George. Unlike other characters, something that has never made sense in the world of Peppa Pig is the fact that George still can't properly communicate with the people around him. Everyone knows he's just a little piglet, but let's be honest. It's about time he learned to say more than just dinosaur. Truth is, throughout the series, we've seen George say other words, like mommy, but he can't seem to form complete sentences, even though he perfectly understands everything others say. Doesn't that seem a bit odd? If George understands what's being said and knows how to pronounce some words, why can't he just speak properly? This is one of those mysteries that keeps fans scratching their heads. Is it something related to how he's being raised? Or is it just a choice by the show's creators to keep the character funnier? Food for thought. Edmund. Now, speaking of intelligence, we have to highlight Edmund. He's a little elephant with an extraordinary memory and knowledge well beyond his years. But wait a minute, let's not forget Edmund is just a 2-year-old. That's right. If you've been a Peppa fan from the start, you already know that Emily's little brother is considered a true genius, way ahead of his time. With so much talent, he seems more suited for university than kindergarten. But how did he acquire so much knowledge at such a young age? The amount of information Edmund knows is absurd for someone his age. It would take years of study to absorb it all. Plus, in one episode, he demonstrates knowing more than Grandpa Rabbit, a much older character. This has led fans to create theories, including the idea that Edmund might actually be an adult in disguise. Intriguing, isn't it? And of course, you don't need to be a genius to know the best thing to do right now is to subscribe to our channel. That way, you won't miss our upcoming videos about Peppa and her family. Face. If Edmund's knowledge is impressive, the universe of Peppa Pig is even more intriguing. In the show's world, we see talking animals, interactive potatoes, and sometimes even Mrs. Rabbit appearing in 2 places at once. But do you know what's truly bizarre? Characters going to space. Yes, that's right. Throughout the series, Grandpa Rabbit has taken Grandma Pig and Madame Gazelle to the moon. And guess what's even stranger? Peppa and George have also been part of these space adventures. But there's one detail no one can explain. How do they breathe outside of Earth without spacesuits? In one particular episode, the rocket is already outside the planet, in an area where there's no oxygen. Yet, characters are completely fine without any kind of protection. This defies all logic and is yet another thing that makes fans scratch their heads and ask, what's going on here? The airplane. Speaking of nonsensical situations, episode 13 of season 5 features one of the series' most hilarious and confusing stories. In it, Peppa, her mom, and George take their goldfish to the vet. Everything seems normal, right? But then things take a strange turn. First, during the appointment, phone rings. It's Dr. Elephant calling Dr. Hamster for an emergency involving a lizard. So far, so good. But then she gets on a plane for the emergency, which is already unusual for a vet clinic. And the craziest part? She brings Peppa and her family along. When they arrive, the lizard's problem turns out to be that it's simply upside down. Seriously. After that, 2 more calls come in. One from Grandpa Pig asking for help with Polly Parrot, who is seasick, and another from Daddy Pig, requesting assistance for ducklings stuck on a roof. All of this is hilarious but makes no sense whatsoever. After all, Dr. Hamster is a vet, not a firefighter. Moments like these show how Peppa Pig can be incredibly entertaining and confusing all at once. And if there's one thing that makes sense, it's your presence here with us. Don't miss out. Check out 2 more videos we've picked just for you. See you in the next video.